Dan RadioStyle, hope everybody out there is having themselves a great day. Definitely one of the more esoteric chapters by far out of Your Faith is Your Fortune, and one of the ones that I really think does demonstrate, frankly, that Goddard was kind of into some of this other deeper stuff that happens in reality. Particular chapter is called Clairvoyance, Count of Monte Cristo. A very interesting, like I said, very symbolic, and that's really his whole point. But one of the key things we get from this, one, life is kind of a storm. We all have our own little problems and challenges and struggles, and we're all trying to find our way to safe haven. Every person basically has within them a plan to reach their dreams. We all have a very deep-seated dream, a life purpose, if you will, and we all have this kind of blueprint within us. A lot of us kind of walk through life and we learn some interesting lessons along the way, some of which, and some of the more important ones, and they tie into manifestation for sure, but it's kind of in that whole seeking false idols. A lot of us put a lot of pressure and love and desire of things that really don't matter in the big picture, and some of us, maybe after a life or multiple lives or whatever, might finally realize that what really does matter are things like love and faith and hope. A lot of us end up becoming imprisoned within our own walls of creation, and so we've kind of got to transition out of that somehow, and that's really kind of like all of our little drama, our little story, where we're trying to learn how to get out of this world that we don't particularly like. Deep digging leads us to self-discovery. Basically, know thyself. And through this process, a lot of us look inward and figure out what's going on inside ourselves and are therefore able to make decisions going forward. Now, once we learn this or start to learn this, a lot of us become very impatient and we want to see things change far quicker than it took us to get to where we're currently at. And there's a bit of an imbalance around that when we do that. But once we shed that old consciousness for the new consciousness, or once again we are born again into the new selves, we now have the secrets available to us. Basically, the skinny of what we're getting out of this very wonderful story. So let's go ahead and kick into it. Starting off, he starts with Mark chapter 8, verse 18. Having eyes, see ye not, and having ears, hear ye not, and do ye not remember? True clairvoyance rests not in your ability to see things beyond the range of human vision, but rather in your ability to understand that which you see. A financial statement can be seen by anyone, but very few can read a financial statement. The capacity to interpret the statement is the mark of clear seeing or clairvoyance. That every object, both inanimate and animate, is enveloped in a liquid light which moves and pulsates with an energy far more radiant than the objects themselves. No one knows better than the author, but he also knows the ability to see such auras is not equal to the ability to understand that which one sees in the world around him. To illustrate this point, here is a story with which the whole world is familiar, yet only the true mystic or clairvoyant has really ever seen it. Synopsis. The story of Dumas, Count of Monte Cristo, is, to the mystic and true clairvoyant, the biography of every man. Edmond Dante, a young sailor, finds the captain of the ship dead. Taking command of the ship in the midst of the storm-swept sea, he attempts to steer the ship into safe anchorage. The commentary. Life itself is a storm-swept sea with which man wrestles as he tries to steer himself into the haven to rest. Life itself is a storm-swept sea with which man wrestles as he tries to steer himself into a haven of rest. Next part. Andante is a secret document which must be given to a man he does not know, but who will make himself known to the young sailor in due time. This document is a plan to set the Emperor Napoleon free from his prison in the Isle of Elba. Commentary. Within every man is the secret plan that will set free the mighty emperor within himself. Part 3. As Dante reaches port, three men, who by their flattery and praise have succeeded in worming their way into the good graces of the present king, fearing any change that would alter their positions in the government, have the young mariner arrested and committed to the catacombs. Commentary. Man, in his attempt to find security in this world, is misled by the false lights of greed, vanity, and power. Most men believe that fame, great wealth, or political power would secure them against the storms of life. So they seek to acquire these as the anchors of their life, only to find that in their search for these they gradually lose the knowledge of their true being. If man places his faith in things other than himself, that in which his faith is placed will in time destroy him, at which time he will be as one imprisoned in confusion and despair. Continuing with part 4. Here in this tomb, Dante is forgotten and left to rot. Many years pass. Then one day, Dante, who is by this time a living skeleton, hears a knock on his wall. Answering this knock, he hears the voice of one of the other side of the stone. In response to this voice, Dante removes the stone and discovers an old priest who has been in prison so long that no one knows the reason for his imprisonment or the length of time that he has been there. The commentary. Here behind these walls of mental darkness, man remains in what appears to be a living death. After years of disappointment, man turns from these false friends, and he discovers within himself the Ancient One, his awareness of being, who has been buried since the day he first believed himself to be a man and forgot what it was to be God. Part 5. The old priest had spent many years digging his way out of the living tomb, only to discover that he had dug his way into Dante's tomb. He then resigns himself to his fate and decides to find his joy and freedom by instructing Dante in all that he knows concerning the mysteries of life and to aid him to escape as well. Dante at first is impatient to acquire this information, but the old priest, with infinite patience garnered through his long imprisonment, shows Dante how unfit he is to receive this knowledge in his present, unprepared, anxious mind. So, with philosophic calm, he slowly reveals to the young man the mysteries of life and time. The commentary. This revelation is so wonderful that when man first hears it, he wants to acquire it all at once. But he finds that after numberless years spent in the belief of being man, he has so completely forgotten his true identity that he is now incapable of absorbing this memory all at once. He also discovers that he can do so only in proportion to his letting go of all human values and opinion. Part 6. As Dante ripens under the old priest's instructions, the old man finds himself living more and more in the consciousness of Dante. Finally, he imparts his last bit of wisdom to Dante, making him competent to handle positions of trust. He then tells him of an inexhaustible treasure buried on the Isle of Monte Cristo. Commentary. As man drops these cherished human values, he absorbs more and more of the light, the old priest, until finally he becomes the light and knows himself to be the Ancient One. I am the light of the world. Part 7. As this revelation, the walls of the catacombs which separated them from the ocean above cave in, crushing the old man to death. The guards, discovering the accidents, sew the old priest's body into a sack and prepare to cast it out to sea. As they leave to get a stretcher, Dante removes the body of the old priest and sews himself into the bag. The guards, unaware of this change of bodies and believing him to be the old man, throw Dante into the water. Commentary. The flowing of both blood and water in the death of the old priest is comparable to the flow of blood and water from the side of Jesus as the Roman soldiers pierced him, the phenomenon which always takes place at birth, here symbolizing the birth of a higher consciousness. Part 8. Dante frees himself from the sack, goes to the Isle of Monte Cristo, and discovers the buried treasure. Then, armed with this fabulous wealth and this superhuman wisdom, he discards his human identity of Edmond Dante and assumes the title of the Count of Monte Cristo. Commentary. Man discovers his awareness of being to be the inexhaustible treasure of the universe. In that day, when man makes this discovery, he dies and awakens as God. Yes, Edmond Dante became the Count of Monte Cristo. Man becomes Christ. This is a great analogy to our whole path, all of us, this entire path on manifesting, what all of us are attempting to do in this manifestation process. There's those of us that have this nailed down, perfect, no issues. We like the videos because we enjoy hearing it and talking about it. And there's some of us that still struggle with this. Some of us find this very challenging. We're all in different parts and places within our voyage and our storm, within our acceptance that every person has a plan. Some of us doubt whether or not that plan's even possible. Some of us are still chasing after false gods. Some might say that could be maybe love that's not truly love, right? Maybe it's just a physical kind of love. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with these things. I'm saying these are part of our journeys. But sometimes people are seeking just money when in reality it's larger than that. What can I do with the money? Can I help people with the money? Is there maybe a business I can do where I can employ people? It's a lot larger than give me a big pile of money because I want to have a big shiny house. Again, there's nothing wrong with that. But as we evolve as souls, as we evolve as people, we generally start to realize that there are things that are more important in life. And that's really one of the beautiful parables about this story as well. Because eventually, we shed these old ways. We shed this old thinking. We shed this old consciousness and replace it with new, with this new version of ourselves, with this newly released from prison version of ourselves that now has the knowledge of the priest, the knowledge of the masters. And we finally allow ourselves to sort of unfold in our own proper way. And when we do, we end up on the island of our dreams. Stan Radio Style.